Welcome to the channel. I'm James Salvatore, and next to me is the newly refreshed 2022 Porsche Macan. And in today's video, I'm going to go over the subtle changes that were made for this year. I'm going to talk about the tech features and go for a drive and share my thoughts on it. And if you're new to the channel, I do new car reviews, new car comparisons, classic cars, exotic cars. So if that's your thing, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on that bell notification so you don't miss out on future videos. With that said, let's get right into it. For 2022, Porsche has facelifted the Macan once again. With the revised front fascia, side blades, and more aggressive rear diffuser, the Macan looks much more aggressive than last year's model. On the interior, Porsche has upgraded the look a bit to match its other products with the addition of the revised haptic feedback panel, replacing all the physical buttons that control the hvac functions and other vehicle functions just in general. Starting at $54,900, the Macan really serves as the entryway into the Porsche world. And it's powered by a 2-liter inline 4-cylinder, producing 261 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque, mated to a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. It'll do 0 to 60 in just 6 seconds and has a top speed of 144 miles an hour. Sitting inside the Macan, it's a very familiar place if you've had a Macan in the last 3-4 years. If you're coming off a lease, this will definitely look very familiar to you. But now we're going to go through some of the changes that I mentioned earlier. All right, you can see this year they've revised the steering wheel. They've brought in the buttons that we've come to get used to in pretty much every other Porsche product. We have some nice controls now to control the screen on the side. The gauge cluster has stayed the same. They kept the analog tachometer with the digital screen on the right. And the infotainment system pretty much seems the same as the 2021 model. And the CarPlay experience is pretty good. You can see we click on that. It's nice and fluid. My only gripe with it is I wish they did render it so that it filled up the entire screen. You could see gone are the physical buttons we had going across here because they were a bit redundant because you do have this strip. You could see the center console now is just like the Cayenne, where you have the haptic feedback buttons, and it does look a lot more cleaned up. Some people really prefer the physical buttons. I like physical buttons, but they had way too many of them, and the center console used to just look way too busy. I really think that this is nice now. It's cleaned up, it's sleek, it's modern. Although, you know, it is going to show a lot of fingerprints, that's for sure. And getting into the back seat, I'd say overall for, you know, the class of vehicle, this is pretty good in terms of leg room and headroom. If you're 6'2", 6'3", you're definitely not going to fit in here, but I'm 6'1", and I'm fairly comfortable. And coming around to the rear, you can see that we have a pretty fair sized trunk. You get 17 cubic feet of cargo storage with the seats up, and about 53 with them down. And you have a nice privacy shade too. It's connected by 2 cables and it's in a track, so if you need to take it out, it's actually pretty easy. So I guess the big question is, how does the Macan drive? Well, I'll tell you. I'd say with the facelift, there's more of an improvement in the driving feel than I expected initially. You know, since driving these cars, I think the first model year I reviewed was 2019. You know, there hadn't been much change, but with this, I definitely noticed a big change in ride quality and handling overall. They've definitely dialed in the suspension more. And you know what, I noticed, I thought they may have tweaked something because when I had both cars, the 2021 and the 2022 parked side by side, this one sat a little bit lower. So I kind of had an assumption that they did a little something there. And it's really made the car feel more planted and more confident. When you put it in sport mode, there's a lot less body roll. I mean, it didn't have a crazy amount of body roll last year, but you definitely do notice the difference. It's just a little bit sharper. And in comfort, you know, you actually do notice a difference with the dampers between settings, whereas before, I don't feel it was adaptive. It was just more just the engine and transmission changing throttle mapping. Whereas this is kind of like more, you know, the suspension and the transmission and the engine are all changing when you go from sport mode to comfort mode, which on the base car, you know, is definitely a nice addition. You know, adaptive suspension usually comes on higher end models. So many auto manufacturers now, seeing that you have the blind spot monitoring and all the cameras, they make these cars have so many blind spots to the point where it's like super annoying. But in this, the visibility is excellent. You look in your mirror, you look out the back, you could see pretty much everything. And the nice thing here is if you see the window, it's lower, so it's like you look out and you instantly see the road. You know, it just adds for more confidence. And another thing is, you know, a lot of new cars, people don't realize this, but like if you push on panels and, you know, kind of like, you know, feel things, you know, quality wise, you'll hear a lot of creaking and groaning. But one of the nice things, you know, like Porsche products, they really do put their interiors together very well. Now, you could customize these interiors so many different ways. You could have leather on pretty much anything you want. But, you know, in terms of just like fit and finish of how it's put together, you know, you push on the panels, you know, the doors, there's no creaking and groaning. And other brands, you know, you'd be surprised at how many brand new cars will actually squeak when you push, like, you know, on some trim. You have none of that in these cars. And I like that, you know, for like touch points like the door handles and the paddle shifters that they've used real aluminum. Like if you tap on this, you really do feel it. Like it's nice. It has a nice feel to it. Now, from a performance enthusiast standpoint, you know, you're most likely, if you're getting a Macan, you know, you're looking for a sporty drive. And that's what I'd say this is, sporty. I wouldn't say that this is a performance car by any means because it doesn't have enough power to be, but that's not really the point of the base car. The point of the base car is having a comfortable, you know, fun to drive daily driver, and I think it accomplishes that. The most satisfaction you'll get from this car isn't necessarily straight line performance. It's going around turns because it handles so well for what it is. It's definitely really satisfying. And the dual clutch transmission is just so responsive. When you go into manual mode, I mean, the shifts are just instant. I mean, listen to this. And you have those little blips on the upshifts. I mean, few auto manufacturers actually put dual clutch transmissions in this class of car, and I feel like it just adds so much to the experience. I mean, listen to these downshifts. Downshift 2 gears, right away, instantly, skips a gear, goes right to second. And you get those little blips on the upshifts and the little crackles, you know, they're not too loud, but they're there on the overrun. I mean, it's fun to drive. It's not an extremely fast, you know, SUV, but that between the handling and, you know, the control you have with the gearbox and the, you know, the feel you have with the brakes, it really does tie together nicely. And the nice thing is with the 4-cylinder, you do get good gas mileage. Now, if you're somebody that is looking for a Macan experience that's more of a spirited drive and you're looking between the GTS and the S, I haven't tested a 2022, and again, those are going to be revised as well, but the 2021s, you know, I didn't really notice too much between the GTS and the S. I think that the S was the better value there. And one of the things that's pretty neat is because it's dual clutch, as you come to a stop when you're at like 4 or 5 miles an hour, the start stop kicks in before you come to a complete stop, which is pretty neat. To sum up my thoughts on the base car, I would say that this is a pretty good package, especially, you know, like if you were to order one of these. I mean, most of the ones that you'll find on a lot are usually between 60 and 70,000, depending on how they're optioned. But, you know, between 55 and 65,000, I would say that this is a really good value for the money. I mean, you're getting a nicely built car. I mean, you really do feel the quality with these cars. You know, little things like you close the door, you know, you have the metal door handles, the paddle shifters, and, you know, just the way it rides, you know, it rides so solid. You just feel like this is a nice quality car. And you know, seeing that they did the refresh this year, all the tech in this car has kind of been gone through, and it's all current with the other Porsche models. So it's really a good package overall. And in terms of, like, you know, having a fun, sporty daily driver, this will definitely accomplish that. And, you know, if you're more into spirited driving, the Macan S will be enough for most. So I definitely recommend you try both of those if you're thinking about, you know, maybe skipping out on a few options and, you know, going for the S just to have a little bit more power. But I mean, there's not much to complain about in here. And if you order the car, there's so many different customization options that you have. You can pretty much wrap anything in this interior in leather that you want, like right down to the steering column. There's plenty of really cool, fun colors to choose from. That's one of the cool things about Porsche as a brand in general. It's like most of their cars could pull off all these funky colors. I mean, this shade of blue has grabbed a lot of attention. It actually came straight off the 911, and it's a new color for this year. And they hold their value very well in the secondhand market. So, you know, if you're looking to buy one of these and sell it, you know, after 3-4 years, you're not going to lose as much money as you would if you were to, say, for instance, buy a Mercedes GLC, or, you know, a BMW X3 or something like that. Those cars lose a lot of their value, and that's a point to be made too. These cars do hold their value. So overall, I definitely recommend that you try it. It's definitely worth your time to go take a look. That pretty much sums up my thoughts on the new Macan. As you can see, the changes are very subtle, but I think they're tastefully done. And if you haven't done so yet and you're really enjoying the video, be sure not to forget to hit that like button for me, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss out on my future videos. Before we go, I'd like to say a special thanks to my friends down at Porsche Fairfield, Connecticut for making this video possible. They're an awesome, super helpful, friendly group of people to work with. And if you're in the market for a new Porsche, be sure to check them out. I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can do so. And with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.